Chairman, you can start the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's meeting of the Cabinet. Welcome also to those members of the public and press who continue to join us via the live stream to YouTube. During the live broadcast, members and officers and the Leader of the Council are asked to please ensure that mobile phones are placed in silent mode and that microphones are switched off when not in use. Agenda item 1, would member services please report any apologies for absence?
Thank you. We've had apologies from Councillor Count and Councillor Seaton. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 2 are the minutes on pages 5 to 8. We're being asked to approve these public minutes of the meeting of the 13th of June 2022 as a correct record. May I ask any member who doesn't agree with the minutes to indicate that now, please? I see no objections to the proposal to approve the minutes as a correct record of the meeting, so they are now agreed and signed. Thank you. Agenda item 3, there are no urgent items for consideration. Agenda item 4 is to receive any declarations of interest under the local code of conduct or any interest under the code of conduct on planning matters in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, would you please inform the meeting now? No hands are raised, thank you. If anything occurs to anyone during the course of the meeting, Councillor Hoy.
Yes, just to be hopefully helpful, and I hope that the legal officer will apologise, accept my apology if I've been a bit too much here, but just regarding the housing enforcement policy, I know there's some advice going to council about a motion, but actually it just suddenly occurs to me the housing enforcement policy will also apply to private landlords. So they would need to declare an interest. I think they might have a DPI, because obviously it's about how we serve fines on landlords. It's literally only just occurred to me because we had a conversation just before this meeting.
Thank you. Yes, I can see what you mean. So the advice would be, if there are any private landlords amongst Cabinet, as you are, let me just, it's an approval of that policy, isn't it, rather than recommendation to full council. Let me get it up. Let's get my agenda up.
It's to adopt the housing enforcement policy.
So as Cabinet is being asked to approve the housing enforcement policy, if you are a private landlord and you consider that the approval of this policy would engage any DPI that you might have, so basically affect any of your land interests either positively or negatively, then my advice would be that you declare that interest and don't participate in the debate or the decision making of this item. And the reason that's significant is because you are actually the decision makers in relation to this item, and if it therefore might directly impact you and engage that interest, then the Constitution and Code of Conduct would require that you not participate. Thank you for raising that.
Thank you, Chairman. Question of Amy. I'm a private landlord. Would you like me to stay in the room or would you like me to leave?
I think to be on the safe side, because land interests are a disclosable pecuniary interest which carry much higher sanction if infringed, that for that item you should leave the room, please.
Right, thank you all very much for that. And as I was just about to say, if any further potential interest occurs to anyone during the course of the meeting, would you please bring it to the meeting's attention without any delay? Thank you very much. Agenda item 5 is the annual report 2021-2022, which is on pages 9 to 30 of your report of the agenda. And we're being asked to approve the annual report of the council for this year. And you will have read it, so I don't need to go through all the details of it. The achievements are listed in a very, very difficult year, it has to be said. This was the second full year of COVID, and it was, I think, less difficult than the first full year, but it was still much more difficult than a normal year would be. And a lot of praise has to go to the way in which officers have managed the services which have been provided to residents not merely the ordinary services which are provided, but the extra services which were required because of COVID. And I think that the positive outlook that we have as far as the annual report is concerned for last year, it's a reflection of some of that really hard work that was done by officers, very often behind the scenes and very often not recognised. So I also want to give credit to Councillor Tierney for again going through this report to make sure that it is clearer, cleaner and easier for people to read and understand. And there's always a danger with these reports that they become so lengthy and so turgid and so out of date that hardly anyone can manage to get to the end of them. So I'd like to congratulate you, Councillor Tierney, on making this even better than it was the year before. Councillor Tierney.
Yes, I appreciate that, Chairman. I've got to say, I really had to do very little this year. Officers have cracked it now, and it's coming out the way I would hope to see, and other people would hope to see every time. I had to very little intervention at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm happy to propose that the annual report be approved. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Clark, thank you very much. Would anyone care to say anything on this agenda item? No one, in which case I will put it straight to the vote. Those in favour of approving the annual report, please indicate. That is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we now move on to agenda item 6, which is the Treasury Management Annual Report for 2021-2022, which is to be found on pages 31 to 40 of your agenda pack. And in this report, we see a record, as usual, we have this come around every year, of the summary of the Treasury management activities which took place during 2021-22. There are a number of things which need to be said here. I think that we do need to be aware that the council did invest an extra £4 million into 2 property unit trusts at the very end of the financial year. So no income would have been received from those, given that the investment was made towards the end of the financial year. But it's our belief that that money will earn significantly greater returns than we would manage to get on the money markets generally. I'm pleased to say that there was no new borrowing which took place during the course of 21-22. And in fact, our overall borrowing figure went down, which is, given the circumstances of last year, is quite an achievement. We did receive amounts from external investments of £52,375, which was more than was budgeted for. And the reason it's more than budgeted for was we didn't anticipate we'd be holding quite as much of the government's money during most of the year that we were doing so. And that's why the figure which is shown for temporary investments of 31,850 is so high. And in fact, over the course of the year, on average, we had just over 32 million of external, mostly government funding, which we were holding, which had been sent to us, or which was surplus to requirements for us to distribute to businesses and to individuals. And we're still holding a significant proportion of that now. So that is the reason that that number is so high. It wasn't that we've suddenly hit the jackpot and we've suddenly got large amounts of money in our back pocket. It's because government has been very slow in asking for the surplus money back, but I'm sure that they will get around to doing that eventually. The amount that we did receive from external investments was slightly lower than it otherwise would have been, because just towards the end of the year 2021, we spent just on £3.7 million on a commercial property investment in Wisbech. I'm pleased to say that produced a good return for us in the year, and it is an indication of the direction of travel that we want to go in, to find ways of getting better returns for the monies that we do hold than we are able to do on the money markets. And for those, and just know the question is going to come from anyone who read the key issues, for those who wonder what SONIA is, it's the Sterling Overnight Index Average. And I was quite convinced that, because I had never come across SONIA before, I must admit, and I was quite convinced that the acronym with an I in it to do with interest rates, the I would stand for interest, but it doesn't. Right, so I'm formally proposing this report. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Benny, thank you very much. Are there any comments that anyone would like to make, please? No comments, okay. So I'd first of all ask members to note this report. Members happy to note it? Yes, thank you very much indeed. And we'll now pass that over to the council, for council to approve or to receive rather. Right, next agenda item is agenda item 7, which is the financial outturn report for 2021-22, which can be found on pages 41 to 48 of the report. And again, I will formally propose this, and if I may have a seconder. Councillor Mrs. Laws, thank you very much indeed. Now, this is another very good report, it has to be said, and a lot of work again has been put in by officers to achieve the very good results that we have here. I'd particularly like to point out, because I think it's important for Cabinet, I think it's important for all members to be aware of the way in which the outturn changed during the course of the year. Because at the December Cabinet meeting, you may recall, we had a paper showing the outturn as being a deficit of £987,000. And you will recall that I did say at the time that I believed that the position would be substantially better by the time we came to the year end. But when we came to the budget meeting of full council in February, the deficit for the then current year was still being shown at the figure of £243,000 as being the expected outturn. Well, I'm pleased to be able to say that the actual outturn was a surplus of £584,000, and the reason for that turnaround of some £820,000 have been given in this report. It does mean that that money, as has been previously agreed, goes into our budget equalisation reserve, which now stands at a figure of 1.067 million. The purpose of setting up the budget equalisation reserve was to act as a sort of feedback loop in order to ensure that, to the extent that there is of necessity prudent budgeting, which leads systemically to surpluses, that is reflected in the way in which we operate. And I think that the whole purpose of the budget equalisation reserve has been proven here, even in the difficult years of COVID. And that subject we'll look at again when we come towards considering next year's budget. So the request which is being made here is to note the outturn for the Council's General Fund Services in 21-22, as detailed in Appendix A, which I've just mentioned. To note the transfer of the surplus in the year to the budget equalisation reserve, and to note the reasons for the variations from the revised estimate, and further to approve the capital funding schedule for 2021, which is at Appendix B, Roman letter I. Right, I have proposed that, and I have a formal seconder, and we have a comment from Councillor French. No, already done. Thank you very much indeed. But I welcome any comments from any members, questions. None. Okay, thank you very much indeed. That is approved. I need to put it formally to the vote because we are approving the capital funding schedule. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much. Right, we can now move to agenda item 8, which is the capital update report, which is to be found on pages 49 to 58 of your agenda pack. Again, I'll formally propose it. May I have a seconder? Councillor Mrs. French, thank you very much indeed. Again, the report is very well laid out as always, makes quite clear what has happened here, and that we have, this is a reprofiled report. And we continue to operate in such a way as to ensure that we can make those capital expenditure that we need to make to deliver the range of the externally funded capital schemes that we've got as well, including the March High Street Fund, and also that wave one of the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. And we will be talking later on in this meeting about the Wisbech High Street project as well. But what is abundantly clear and has been becoming increasingly clear over the recent weeks is the significant inflationary pressures which there are within the country as a whole, but also specifically so far as we are concerned with the costs of materials, labour and finished goods, all of which feed in to our capital programme and what we spend. So we are going to have to need to look quite carefully now and in the near future at our capital programme to ensure that those projects which are currently underway are continue to be monitored and controlled as tightly as we possibly can, and that we ensure that we have a future capital programme which is realistic given the inflationary pressures that there have been. There are two major issues which are on the horizon, which are mentioned in the report. The first is the accommodation review, and regardless of which option or options are finally taken on that, there will be some significant medium-term costs involved, maybe even some short-term costs, and these will need to be financed over the medium to long term, given the fact that we'll be making decisions which will affect the way in which this council operates for 30 or 40 years over the course of the next 1 or 2 years. And the second significant item which needs to be mentioned are the remedial works at the quay in the port of Wisbech, which are going to be very significant. There's going to be a further report which is going to come to us at some stage on that, and we need to look extremely carefully again at the costs involved of that. So those are the warning signs for the future, but overall it has to be said that we're starting from a sound base, which is a far, far better position, I have to say, than many other local authorities, particularly district councils around the country. And it's thanks to the good stewardship there's been, both from officers and members over the course of many years, that we can face the challenges which there will be ahead with somewhat more confidence than some of our fellow councils at the district council level. Right, any questions or comments from anyone? Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 13, growing Fenland civil parking enforcement. You have down 252,000 for 22-23 and 100 for 23-24. Total 358. Can you tell me what's happened to the 48,000? The whole programme was 400,000.
Thank you very much. Well, as you are very well aware, Councillor Mrs. French, these figures were all estimated at the very beginning. And the expectation would be, if these were to be the actual figures, and you know as well as I do that they probably won't end up being the actual figures, but if these did end up being the actual figures, then the remainder would still be used for parking as is required, but more likely to be the off-street parking that we have responsibility for ourselves, to ensure that the rules and regulations for off-street parking are tightened up and made legal where they're currently not legal, so that the enforcement which takes place on street is also able to be replicated off street as well, because there are savings to be made by joining those two things together.
Thank you, Bidder. Yeah, obviously you're well aware we do have problems with County Council at this time. They're trying to push this back. We do have a highway meeting at County tomorrow. It's not on the agenda, but we will be looking to have an update on that. And I would be very disappointed that if County Council do pull the rug on us, because we have worked on this since 2019 and successfully got the money from the combined authority.
Thank you. I think we all share that hope. Right, so the proposal is, oh, sorry, Sam.
Yeah, just regarding the Wisbech Park, the water park, I did ask for an update about a week ago and I haven't heard as to, do we know when that's going to be opening? We had originally heard it was hoped for the children's summer holidays, which are obviously in about a week's time. Now, obviously, I know things don't necessarily progress, but it'd be a shame if we can't get it open before summer, because otherwise people won't be able to use it. Also, we did have some talk of some toddler play equipment and a running, I don't want to use the word running track, because I don't want to make it sound grander than it was, but perhaps a running pavement. It was also supposed to be included, and I didn't see that included in the cabinet report, so it might be good if we could have an update to Cabinet as to what's happening with all of those items, please.
Thank you. I'm not able to give the update myself so far as the opening date is concerned and whether the children's play equipment is included in the figures. And I don't think that Councillor Murphy is able to either. I will open it up to any officer who may, please find a microphone wherever you can manage to find one so that, yeah, excellent. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Leader. Thanks for the question, Sam. The water pad itself is almost complete now. We're not putting in the equipment above ground at the moment until it's in use. We are doing some trenching, some electricity and some water supply works. It's going to be very tight for the end of the summer holidays. It might exceed that time because the connection between the equipment we've put in and UKPN and Anglian Water. In terms of the, do you want to go first, Steve? Yeah, in terms of the play area, we're going to do that after we've completed the water pad.
And Phil, may I just check about the any issues you have with the utility providers at the moment, which is causing any difficulty on this?
We need to dig the trench first. So whilst that work's going on, the site kick-off meetings tomorrow morning, whilst that work's going on, we're going to make sure that UKPN and Anglian Water are teed up once that's completed to do the connection as soon as possible.
Thank you. Steve?
Yes, thanks. Just following on from that, not wanting to be too based on we speech only, but since the issue's been raised, it would be wonderful if some magic could be made so that it could be working for the Rock Festival. That's 4 weeks' time. Now, I realise that if you can't, you can't. You're doing everything you can, and I accept that putting things in are difficult, but I just think that would be quite special, and I'd love to see that.
I don't know if we can ask for miracles, but Phil, would you care to give an answer?
I think it's unlikely, to be honest.
Thank you for the honest answer. Sam?
Yeah, I just also didn't have an answer about the running sort of pavement or area.
We haven't figured that in yet at all. That was going to be spent from Section 106 money because of the slight cost overrun of the water and the power connections. We've spent some Section 106 on that. However, we are looking at other sources for that at the moment.
Sam?
Yeah, so I mean, it would have been useful for members to perhaps have known that before this cabinet meeting, because now it sounds like we're not going to have the running track until we can find some more money. And we already know how pushed the capital programme is. So obviously the public and running club are now going to be really disappointed. And it keeps happening in meetings. We keep finding out things at the last minute, or there's overspends. I mean, to say that the park is not going to be finished before the end of the summer holidays, that's 7 weeks away. We're going to have a water park that's going to be opening in the autumn. We're going to be absolutely ridiculed as a council, and rightfully so, for opening a facility for kids to play in the autumn when it's cold and kids won't be using it. So we've got the whole winter months when the park's dark, it won't be used, it'll get dirty, it'll get vandalised, and by the time next summer comes, it won't be a new park anymore. It's just really, really just disappointing.
Phil, would you care to give any answer to that?
I'm disappointed as well. We started construction in February, I believe, and we've been working since that time to deliver it for the summer holidays. We'd hoped for on or around the 21st of July. That's just not been possible.
Thank you. Right, any other? Oh, Jack.
Thank you. Item 20, I think it's 28 March mooring renewals. You have down there 24,000. Have we actually had back from middle level, they were going to do a quotation, how much it was going to cost if they were going to do that? Have we had that? I know it's mixed up with the high street, which everything else is mixed up with the high street. But you have it 24,000 in there. Is that going to be a true price, or is it going to be another one? It's going to go through the roof.
I think I'll ask Phil if he'd be kind enough to give an answer to that one as well.
Thank you for the question, Councillor French. It won't be enough for the moorings at all. So there's two aspects to the moorings. There's the mooring in West End Park and consideration of increasing the size of the moorings in the middle of town. Middle level got back to me yesterday regarding the cost of increasing the size of the moorings in the middle of town, and a couple of weeks ago with regards to the West End Park moorings. What we're spending that £24,000 on is replacing and improving the pump out facility following members' direction. So we'll have to come back to Cabinet at another time to improve the moorings in the centre of town and Western Park.
Thank you, Phil, for that. I have to say it's totally unacceptable. We did go on the boat trip a few weeks ago. We spent a considerable amount of time discussing the moorings that hadn't worked or were out of action for over 3.5 years. We were not discussing at the time the new moorings. We were discussing the one that is there and the one that is in a dangerous state. And it is deeply disappointing that, you know, what we've just heard from Phil. I'm just not happy with the answer. So what is the actual price quoted if you say you got it yesterday, unusual on a Sunday, but to actually repair the broken moorings that's there? Because at the boat trip, the chief executive middle level and chief engineer were there discussing this. Have you got an actual price for me, please?
So middle level were asked to come up with a price for 2 different designs for the mooring in West End Park. One was to replace as current. Price came back about 2.5 weeks ago. That was £88,000. The other option was to provide a gabion-based mooring. They haven't come back with a price for that yet, so I'm waiting on that information still. And I only got the information for the centre of town yesterday. We're yet to get information from middle level regarding the riverside in the middle of town and reinforcing that so that we could put a path down. So we don't have any of that information or any cost yet.
So therefore that 24,000 that's allocated in the capital programme certainly not going to meet repairs.
Yeah, it's going to be used for the pump out station.
I'm sorry, Leader, that was not agreed. It was agreed the repair of the mooring that has not worked for 3.5–4 years. The pump station, to replace that was coming out of the High Street funding. Please get it right.
Phil?
Originally, the High Street funding wasn't going to repair the pump out station at all. It was moving. So, you know, following our river trip, members instructed us to get the pump out station back in action as soon as possible. And that's what we're doing at the moment.
Mr. Leader, we went for a boat trip. We had a long discussion with regard to the pump house. It was agreed by officers, not by members, that they were either going to remove it or they're going to push it up to Fox's boatyard. Having spoken to Fox's, I went there and had a long meeting with her. Then I arranged the boat trip so that everybody could see. Fox's is a private business. They don't have main sewers. They have to pump out every week. They'll bring vehicles in to pump out, and there's no way that they wanted to do that. So that was made crystal clear. The Watermen's Club, which is slightly further up, officers expected it was going to be moved there. They didn't contact the Watermen's Club, they didn't contact middle level. So after the boat trip, we discussed that the pump house was going to actually be repaired, upgraded, etc., with the money coming out of the High Street. So the 24,000 should not be used for that. This, unfortunately, Leader, is getting in such a mess. Where money is coming for, what's it for? You know, it would appear that nobody is actually listening to the conversations we're having.
Thank you for that. I believe that there is a meeting which is going to be taking place tomorrow, which at least will be tangential to this issue. And I wonder if that could be taken up at that meeting with more detail so that we can see exactly where we are. Right, are there any other comments about the capital programme update? Oh, sorry, I do apologise, Councillor Mrs. Laws. My apologies. Sorry, please do use your microphone. Thank you.
It was just to add to that last part of the conversation. I sit on the navigation or to the middle level. And I've heard various conversations. If it would help, I mean, we've got a meeting shortly, but I'm quite prepared to go to David Thomas and Graham Moore. And obviously Phil's involved with that committee, he couldn't make last meeting, but maybe we can do something because these moorings have been talked about. They're unsafe. They need to be in use because people are actually reporting the fact they can't actually use them. So if it's helpful, I'll go back and have some conversations.
Through you, Leader, just to inform you, there is a meeting tomorrow afternoon and hopefully Dave Thomas will be there. And I'm not sure whether, I forget his name, I'm terrible with names, your navigation chairman might be there as well. Chairman.
Oh, Chris.
That's it.
Okay, thank you, Richard, and thank you for that intervention, indeed, much appreciated. Right, so we are being asked to approve the updated capital report, which is in Appendix A.
Peter, could
Oh,
I-
sorry,
Sorry, could I
Apologies.
just ask, it's not on the capital programme yet, but my understanding, well, I'm looking at the years, it is my understanding that the piece of land at the top end of West End Park, part of it has already been handed over. The other part is where they're putting car parking in for the fishermen. And this was something that was agreed in 2003. And finally, it's happening. Unfortunately, we have massive, and I'm saying massive problems with antisocial behaviour and destruction of the equipment that's already there. I do know that the site manager has put some cameras up, but I think we need to be looking, and I know it will be Councillor Murphy's portfolio, we need to be looking into bringing CCTV in that area, which obviously is going to be a cost. So I'm just at warning shots that I will be talking to Councillor Murphy when this is handed over. I mean, we put in through the government money or the money for the tree planting, we put 20 plants, trees, and quite mature trees. When we had the lighting of the beacon on the 4th of June, we discovered 2 of the silver birches, which were probably about 9 foot tall, had actually been snapped in half, which is very sad to see that. So we do need additional CCTV in the area. And I'm very thankful that Mega Plants of Doddington have actually secured 2 very mature trees for me. And they're going to give them to us free of charge in October.
Thank you for that. And I'm sure that Councillor Murphy will be only too pleased to speak with you and to see what's available within budget in terms of the choices that we make. Right. Any other comments from any members on this item? So the capital programme update, we're being asked to approve the updated capital report, which is in Appendix A of this agenda item. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we next move on to the Shared Prosperity Fund, agenda item 9, which is on pages 59 to 80 of your agenda pack. And if I may ask Councillor Benny to introduce this, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will have noted from the Cabinet report that the UK Shared Prosperity Fund is the government's domestic replacement post-EU exit from the European Structural and Investment Programme. All areas of the UK are receiving an indicative allocation of the fund via a formula where the funding available to Fenland is approximately 1.3 million and a total of 8.78 million across the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority area over a 3-year period. This commenced for financial year 2024-25. It should be noted, these are indicative allocations and are not guaranteed. The CPCA will collate all Cambridgeshire and Peterborough local authority projects into a local investment plan for presentation to the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities that will make the decision on Shared Prosperity Fund allocation later this year. Members will have noted from the original Cabinet report and subsequent proposed amendment to the Cabinet report that Cabinet is requested to consider and recommend the 5 proposed Fenland District Shared Prosperity Fund projects to the CPCA for inclusion in the local investment plan and recommend a contribution from the Fenland District Indicative Shared Prosperity Fund allocation to support the delivery of the CPC area area-wide skills projects.
Thank you very much indeed. Just as a procedural matter, as you mentioned, that since publication of the agenda, there are proposed alterations to the original content which have been circulated and published to reflect that 10.5% contribution which is proposed to be made to the CPCA-wide skills projects. So in accordance with Rule 12.7 of the Council Standing Orders, Councillor Benny, you are able to make these alterations without the need for discussion, provided that we have the consent of the meeting to do so. And with this in mind, and before you formally propose this report, may I just ask if the meeting consents to the alterations being made as set out on pages 71 to 79 of the revised agenda pack? All happy? Yes, everyone happy. Thank you very much indeed. So would you care to formally propose the report? Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Mrs. French. Thank you very much indeed. Now open the item for discussion. Comments from anyone? It has to be said that I think we've got quite a good deal in terms of the 10.5% of funding which will go into the CPCA wide skills-based schemes. And the reason is that I think for the first time, the CPCA has agreed, both the mayor and the leaders, they've agreed that this money should be spent on a needs basis rather than just split proportionately between the different districts and the two cities. And that will mean that Fenland, and to a lesser extent Peterborough, will get a very significant share of this total fund. And we actually need to, because of the 237, I think the number is, I may be wrong, local authorities, lower level local authorities or unitary authorities that there are in England. Finland comes third from the bottom of the list in terms of the measured skills and education that we have in this area. And it's something we've recognized for a long time needs to be addressed. And we hope that this will make a significant additional contribution towards addressing that. And when you compare that to the position that, for example, South Cambridgeshire has, which I believe from memory was the 10th best out of those 237 local authorities, it shows the stark divide that there is between different areas within the combined authority area, and why it's so important that this money is spent on a needs basis, and that the needs which there are in Finland and to a lesser extent in Peterborough are recognised. Any other comments from anyone? No, then I will put it to a vote. The recommendations are on page 72 of the agenda pack. Should have in front of you. So we're being asked to consider and recommend the 5 proposed Finland UK Shared Prosperity Fund projects to the CPCA for inclusion in the CPCA Local Investment Plan to be submitted to the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. All proposals remain as detailed in the original report, with the exception of BUS 7, for which funding is reduced by £130,935, and that £130,935 is now proposed to be taken and used as FDC's contribution of 10% of allocated funding, sorry, 10.5% of allocated funding to deliver the CPCA area-wide skills projects, which are detailed in Appendix 1 to this document. Those in favour, please show. Again, that is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Now move on to agenda item 11, which is the draft 6-month cabinet for. Have I jumped over an item? 10. Councillor Hoy's moment in the sun. I do apologise, Sam. We do have the housing enforcement policy, and I should have noticed it, since it took up virtually 3/4 of the pages in the agenda today. On pages 81 to 246, we have the housing enforcement policy report. Councillor Hoy, may I call upon you to propose it, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Housing enforcement policy was approved originally in 2018, and it sets out for openness and transparency to tenants, agents and landlords the range of powers available to the council contained in legislation that we use on a daily basis. The emphasis in the work we do is our approach should not punish good landlords, and I believe this approach does that. If you're a good landlord, you should have nothing to fear. The policy has worked well and has stood up to scrutiny at every residential property tribunal the council has attended to defend fines. Nevertheless, there has been some learning from court cases that has led to the need to have a legal review of the policy to give greater clarity to all involved in the process. In summary, the revised policy sets out improved layout and wording in some sections, additional new regulations that the council is now enforcing on, although the policy does reflect the fact that regulations change and the council will implement and enforce changes as required once the policy has been approved. There's a new approach to the fine matrix to reflect legal feedback, but to remain within the fine maximum of £30,000. The need to be more explicit on the checks and balances offered for a landlord or agent on the ability to pay to be considered as part of the review process by council. We consulted ONS on this policy and stakeholders in May and June, and the feedback we received is set out in the report. I'm happy to answer any queries that you may have and also recommend the policy for approval as set out in the appendix.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Tierney, thank you very much indeed. Right, happy to open this item for discussion. Any comments from anyone? Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's interesting how different councils around the country handle these particular policies and issues. And I think that Finland has taken a nice balanced approach that is different to many other councils, in that there are things we could have done which would have been punitive to landlords and would have harmed people's ability to get housing that we did not do, that we pushed back against. And there are other policies that we've championed which do, as Councillor Hoy said, and which punish those bad landlords without creating a situation where people don't want to be landlords, which would help nobody. So I think that the balance is perfect. I think we've got it right. And I think that the way the council is approaching these matters is one that is respected both by landlords and tenants. People can see that we've improved the places that are available for rent around the area. There's still more to be done, of course, but certainly significant improvements have been made. And I think Councillor Hoy has led very well on this. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Sam.
Yes, thank you for those comments, but I also must really thank the team, because when I started this role back in 2019, I was very keen that we implement a policy such as this, where we find the bad guys rather than sort of bring in policies that would harm everybody. And the team embraced that, to be honest, and every day go out and they're doing this and serving the fines and working really hard. And you know, to actually be able to get staff that actually say to you, yeah, okay, yes, we can do this and we're going to do this, is great. Really, that's what you want. So that's big thanks to them, please.
Thank you for that. I think we all share those thoughts. Sam. Right, Jan.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask Councillor Hoy. I'm pleased that this is being introduced. I did take you down on a site visit several years ago, the Chase in March, which is off Call Road. It is a house that's been vandalised. It's cost FDC a fortune boarding it up. At one time, the dwelling was forced to be sold. It owes Finland a lot of money. I don't know what's happened to it now. I did see an email from one of the residents again. This has gone on for about 5 or 7 years. It's not acceptable. Officers are aware of it, and I did actually send an email this morning to one of the officers to try to find out what's happening. Councillor Benny's not here at the moment, but he actually came out in a site inspection as well. It was at one time a nice bungalow. It is absolutely, apart from the shell, it's been destroyed. It cannot continue. You need to take some kind of legal action against the, excuse me, against the owners to try to bring this property back, plus to retrieve the amount of money that's owed to Finland. And it is considerable.
Thank you very much indeed. Sam, are you in a position to give a direct answer to that, or would it be easier?
No, I can. So regarding this, mostly obviously the housing enforcement policy relates to lots of things that we do under housing Hume's Fit for Habitation Act. So that's mostly regarding that with dwellings, whereas also counter running to that is obviously the planning side. And without sort of trying to put council laws on the spot too much, obviously one of the things that we need to be doing is perhaps serving more 215 notices. And I've had a conversation with the leader myself about this, that actually there's a number of properties around the district, I'm sure we can all name them, that have been going on for too long. either empty or we're being told that they're going to be fixed and seem to never ever be fixed. And so I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think 215 notes because perhaps would be more keen to see them
Thank you.
served more often.
Through you, Chairman, I'm pleased to hear that. And yes, it won't be a 215, it'll be a 216, which I'm very pleased that we actually served or are serving two notices on 216s at the last planning meeting. And I do welcome this, and I think it's time that Fenley started taking a tough line, because we've got far too many dwellings and properties right across the whole of Finland that have totally been allowed to fall into wreck and ruin.
Thank you for that. Councillor Laws.
Thank you, Leader. I don't disagree with what's been said, but there's also a balance here as well, as what it could cost the council or the individuals. So obviously we'll look at properties. If there are any that really members would like to highlight in particular, then please let us know. But also one particular issue is that we're behind with the courts as well since COVID. I know this through other circumstances, particularly where we've issued legal action. We're in a large queue because during COVID, obviously the priority was criminal cases, foster care, adoption, etc. So these other cases have gone really down the list. So some have been issued, and then we have to be patient from there as well. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you for that, Councillor Laws. And I think that it does help, to be quite honest, given the problems that there are with the courts, if we actually take up your offer, and take it was an offer, that if there are specific properties which need, in your opinion, to for action to be taken, if D is informed about them, then that can at least start the process rolling if it's appropriate to do so. And if it's not appropriate to do so, it can always be taken up with me. Oh, sorry, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite an interesting debate, so I just thought I'd pitch into it because we don't often have them here at Cabinet. So first of all, every sympathy with Councillor Laws, because you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't to some extent. But and she's absolutely right about there needing to be a balance, because we consider ourselves a compassionate council. If somebody, for instance, has a fire or a financial problem and it plunges them into difficulties, the last thing we want to do is be right on their back the minute it happens saying, don't forget this, you've got to do this. It's going to help nobody. It might drive them to ruin. But on the same scale, if you wait too long and are too sympathetic, it can then become this problem that never goes away. And then the owners become harder to find or harder to track down, or have less money even than they had before. And you end up with situations that can cripple an area. If you're in a residential area and you're living around a house that had a fire 4 years ago and it's still a ruin, you have to live there next to this kind of dangerous, unsightly ruin. And you're saying, well, why, if this happened to us, what, I'm sure they'd take a different approach. We probably wouldn't, but people think that. And then in the same, if you're in the sort of the entrance to a town centre and there's a problem there that then stops entry to the town centre, that has a knock-on effect on every business and every customer going into that town, potentially for years, and to every event that might be held there. And you know, these are issues that pertain to places we know about, but there are many other situations as well that are just as difficult. My opinion is we are perhaps slightly too far on the compassionate side, not too much, but just slightly too far. I think I would like to see us be just a little tougher, not unreasonably tough, not horrible, but just say to people, this can't go on forever. What's going on? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Steve. And I have to say, from my point of view, and I have had some conversations with a few of you over the last few days on this very issue, I think I would concur with the fact that we need to be somewhat tougher. But you also mentioned compassion, and I certainly had one such case of a burnt out property in my ward, and Dee will know exactly which one I'm talking about. The circumstances were absolutely tragic, and the circumstances of the person who had to deal with it all afterwards were tragic as well. So we do have to have compassion in some cases, but there's a difference between compassion and being taken advantage of. Councillor Mrs. Ross.
Finding contractors, this takes time. There is a process, but if anyone in any member has any particular buildings, then please highlight to me. But you know, we do try to be compassionate as well. And that particular case Lee has just spoken about was a tragic case. But you know, we're a council, and yes, we've got to look at every member of the electorate and their feelings about properties and living next door to them as well. So please let me know.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? No. Then the recommendation is to adopt the housing enforcement policy as set out on page 82. Just for the purposes of the minutes, point out that Councillor Benny has been absent for the whole of this debate and is not taking part in this vote. Those in favour, please indicate. Again, that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Would someone? Yes, thank you very much indeed, Amy. I don't really want this mentioned at all today. Just works for source of government. Right, welcome back, Councillor Benny. We now move on to agenda item 11, which is the draft 6-month cabinet forward plan, which is on pages 247 and 248 of your agenda pack. Are there any questions or comments about this? None. Thank you. The forward plan is therefore noted for information. There are no urgent items under agenda item 12. Agenda item 13 is 24 High Street, Wisbech, the award of contract and approval of associated finance and officer delegations, which is to be found on pages 249 to 280 of your agenda pack, of the public agenda pack. Now, this item should have been introduced by Councillor Seaton, who unfortunately is unwell and unable to do so, so I'll try to act in his place. Members are reminded that whilst the majority of the report in our agenda pack can be debated in public, there are exempt schedules which, if requiring discussion, will result in our taking a vote on whether or not to move to exempt session. I would like to avoid moving to exempt session if we can manage to do so. If we can't manage to do so, then we will have to do so. So we'll remain in public session for as much of the debate as possible. However, if any member wishes to discuss the content of the schedules, then following presentation of the report, please do confirm your intention to do so. And that will be put to the vote as soon as it's necessary for us to go into exempt session. And basically, I stand to be corrected by officers on this. As far as the exempt items are concerned, the identity of the preferred tenderer is an exempt item, and the amount involved of the tender, I believe, is also an exempt item, among other things. So those two things in particular should not be mentioned in open session. So I will now propose the report formally, and I've been kindly given some words to read out by officers on this to make sure I don't make a mess of it. As you're aware, FDC owns the gap, that is 24 High Street in Wisbech. Previously this year, the council went to open tender for a contractor to develop the site to an approved design consisting of a small ground floor commercial unit with flats above. Unfortunately, on that occasion, we were unsuccessful in attracting a bidder. The council subsequently used a government framework agreement to identify a number of companies who are interested in the opportunity. This procurement process concluded last week. This site is challenging for a builder. It is on the high street, meaning traffic management and pedestrian issues. The site has a cellar, and it is between two other buildings with party wall considerations to address. Additionally, the contractor's compound would need to be located elsewhere. Following the receipt of tenders, officers have prepared exempt schedules to this report. That's a summary of the situation that we're in. What the recommendations are is to note the anticipated total value of redeveloping 24 High Street, capped in accordance with the terms and conditions of the Crown Commercial Services Government Construction Framework. To recommend to full council that full council considers and approves the options available for funding the redevelopment of 24 High Street based on the value anticipated by the preferred bidder and as set out in Schedule 3, and delegates to the Chief Finance Officer, in consultation with the leader, authority to identify and utilise the most appropriate combination of funding, having regard to the Council's wider budgetary duties and obligations, and, subject to the above, recommending to full council that they approve the negotiation and entry into a contract with the preferred bidder in accordance with the requirements of the Code of Procurement and the legal advice and due diligence requirements set out in Schedule 1, seeking at all times to ensure that the council maintains its best value obligations. Right, now I'll formally ask for a seconder, if I may. Councillor Tierney, thank you very much. Now move to a debate. If anyone is so desperate that they want to speak about any of the items in the schedule, which we've all read, the schedules, then please do indicate that, and please make sure that we go into exempt session before talking about those items. If anyone wishes to discuss this matter and this proposal generally without referring to those, then of course we don't need to go into exempt session during that period. So any comments first of all from any members where we won't need to go into exempt session? Councillor Tierney first.
Yeah, I think my views are pretty clear and pretty well known. It's taken a long time. I'm glad we're finally there. I'd like to just press on and get it done as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Sam.
Yeah, my question was how soon, if we approve this today, can we mobilise things? Because obviously I'm just a bit concerned. Costs are rising all the time. I went out to a business with the economic development team last week, and they were saying, for example, they're getting a quote for steel one day and in the morning it's changed. So I'm just a bit concerned that if we approve this today, it's going to escalate again if we take too long. So how fast can we mobilise?
It's a matter of the amount of time that it takes for our professional advisors and for our officers to be able to negotiate with the preferred bidder on various items, which, as has been made quite clear in the report, still need to be bottomed out. That is, I believe, a matter of weeks rather than months, weeks rather than days, and weeks rather than months. And I'm looking to officers to indicate that I've got that wrong. But we wouldn't be talking about months, many months. We wouldn't be talking about just a few days. We're talking about weeks. As far as prices are concerned, it has been suggested that so far as the building trade is concerned, we may be entering a plateau where prices may not continue to escalate the way they have done in recent months. There can be no guarantee about that. For all we know, prices in a few weeks' time will be lower than they are now. The prices of goods, particularly steel, it has to be said, aren't merely down to simple inflationary factors, but a whole host of other factors as well, many of which will work their way out of the system eventually. Eventually won't be quick enough, I think, for this project, but it's not necessarily an onward, upward spiral as far as the costs are concerned for the raw materials in the building trade. I don't know if there's anything I've just said where officers would care to add to it or correct anything I've said. If so, I'd be, no, good. I hope that answers your question. It will be done as quickly as it can be, but we are talking about a few weeks. Any other comments anyone feel that they can make in public session? No? Does any member wish to discuss in detail any of the matters which are in the exempt papers?
Mr. Chairman, Leader, we have spent months, if not years, on this. I think we've had enough conversations. Let's just get on and get it done.
Thank you very much indeed. We do have a very clear set of papers given to us in support, in the appendices, in support of the paper that is in the public domain. If no one wishes to say anything further, then we can, in public session, go to these recommendations. And I did just read them out, so I don't think I need to read them out again. Those in favour, please indicate. That is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. We now need to move to agenda item 14. And these are the exempt minutes from the last meeting. So it's going to be necessary, unfortunately, for me to ask that we move into exempt session for this item. Members in favour? Everyone but Councillor Benny. Thank you very much indeed. All in favour, thank you very much indeed. So we will move into exempt session to consider the exempt minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll contact IT and ask them to cut the live stream. I'll let you know as soon as it's ended. Thank you.